Right, guys, welcome back to the Beautiful Struggle podcast with myself, Jay Davis, aka Magic Eye. Back Pond Road, back tearing up the motorways of the UK doing shoots. I'm currently on set in Manchester. Shoots today, podcast tonight, shoots tomorrow, so it's a busy one. First of all, before we get into this podcast, I just want to thank everyone that tuned into the last one, which is obviously me on my lonesome, doing a little solo dolo update on everything I've been through, kind of the plans going forward or whatever. And, you know, I received a lot of messages of support after that, especially from guys that are potentially going through the same thing. And if me putting my little shenanigans out there helps other people deal with their shenanigans, and maybe give them some direction with decisions they might have to make soon or think about in the future, then my work here is done. So thank you very much. And on to today's episode. So, as I said, I am on location in Manchester. My guest today, I'd say he's like 30% Mancunian now because he's actually been here so long. And then maybe 30% Nigerian because he's around Yemi so much. Hopefully Yemi's Nigerian, I'm not sure. But and then the rest is probably Irish. He's got the raspiest voice. He's like the Irish Barry White. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome in Ross Byrne to the Beautiful Struggle podcast.
Thank you, my brother.
I love my intros, bro. I love my intros.
This is absolutely sick.
You like it?
Yeah, bro. Like, I've obviously seen you do your thing. Before I get into anything now, though, I just want to say a massive well done for you in terms of what you've done lately and the kind of shit that you went through and the suddenness of the decision that you had to make relative to the fact that you kind of owned the idea initially of being like, nah, I got some more in me. And then you were kind of presented with this, like, what for a lot of people was going to be, you know, something that would either lead to confusion or something that would either lead to dismay or, you know, a lot of people would not be able to handle that. And for you to be able to make the best decision for you as not even just an athlete, but just as a human being, as a dad, you know, as a husband, I think that's probably more honourable than any decision to prep that you could have ever have made. So I'm sure I'm sure everyone aligns with me, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who will. Hopefully, there's a lot of people who will listen to this or watch this.
I'm sure they will.
Who are going to agree with the fact that what you did was cool as shit, mate.
All right.
You know, all the praise that you've been getting for it is well deserved.
I appreciate that, bro. Yeah.
Well done.
We spoke off camera, and he asked me how am I, and my reply. I think he knows where I am with it all with my reply. But we're just dealing with it, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I'm currently going through my own beautiful struggle, man, and they never fucking stop, do they? It's just a different struggle.
Exactly. No, I'm the same, bro. Because like obviously, I think I've made the preliminary decision probably to hang it up for now. So I think I think we're in the same sea but different boats.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of way.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're kind of trying to tackle that one. So I know that kind of feeling of that kind of lost feeling. Yeah. You kind of have it like, oh, everything that I've done in the gym, everything that I've done with every trip to the kitchen has been centered around this thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're kind of finding yourself like, why do I do anything? You know, because you realize how closely your identity is tied to bodybuilding. And then I think you kind of sometimes forget, and I think it happens to every athlete really, where you become bodybuilding. Yeah. You know, you're not really a bodybuilder. A lot of the time you become bodybuilding.
And that's the thing, we're not trying to be bodybuilders. No. However, 80% of Instagram is really trying fucking hard to be bodybuilders, but then they're not getting it. No. And you just kind of fall into it through a love for it and a passion for it. And then I didn't even feel comfortable calling myself a bodybuilder for many years until you know that, until I competed that first year. So, you know, you're not forcing it. It just kind of happens, and then obviously something else happens, and then you're like, oh, am I actually a bodybuilder anymore? Or?
I think it happens to everyone, though. I think the vast majority of people, bodybuilding finds them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like I know for me, like, I had no intentions of ever bodybuilding, ever. You know, it was like just something that was a thing that was involved in fitness, and I was PTing and coaching at the time. And you kind of, you know, especially for me at that kind of earlier stage of my career where I was just kind of like, not like easily influenced, like, but I was trying to find those mentors and I was trying to find those like inspiring parts of like where I want to go and what I want to look at. And I think you just try a prep, you know, and you know, it's something I don't necessarily agree with now in terms of just doing a prep for the sake of trying it. But I done it once. I was like, turns out this is what I'm good at, you know. And was I a good bodybuilder? Fuck no. But I was able to adhere and I was able to do everything I needed to do to achieve that goal in the sense of like the prep alone. And you know, I was like, so I can do this thing, and I do have this thing that I'm super passionate about, because previously I was involved in martial arts. And it wasn't too long after I kind of hung up martial arts and kind of solely went in on the coaching side of things. that it ended up being like, okay, so there is something I could put my attention into, because I always had that ability to, kind of center my attention or center my focus on something that was progressive.
Yeah.
And then bodybuilding kind of gave me that again, and doing it ever since.
I just want to touch on something. You said that you weren't a good bodybuilder. You were a good bodybuilder because I seen you work day in, day out in the gym.
Yeah, I guess
so,
it's how you define a good bodybuilder.
It's the old thing, are you a bodybuilder unless you step on stage? No, that's a competitive bodybuilder. But, in terms of being a bodybuilder, bro, you can't take that away from you, because I witnessed it firsthand behind the lens. So
yeah, for sure. Like, I guess was I good at the process of bodybuilding? 1,000%. Like, that's something I'll not take away from myself. Like, you seen me and the details of my prep last year. It was heavy.
Yeah,
it was hard, and Callum even mentions it himself that he's not really pushed anyone that far before. Now he told me afterwards. I didn't know. I was just doing.
Well, he was telling us all. You just didn't know at the time.
Yeah, exactly. I was just doing what I was told. I had to do some pretty mental stuff, and like that aspect of bodybuilding is something that I know I'm good at, and translates to just about everything else. That kind of way. And I think that in terms of like the ability to stick to something like that, no matter whether you're genetically gifted or not, no matter where your goal is the Olympia, whether it's a pro card, high level amateur ranks, I think that's what centralizes an individual's respect of the game. Like, can you do that thing?
Yeah.
Are you a part-timer? If you're a part-timer, like, you're not going to get the same level of respect as you would if you're giving it everything despite wherever you're looking to go. The end goal for any athlete is going to be shifted and going to be changed relative to so many different variables, but the process of getting to that point is very, very similar.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kind of joins us all in this like mutual level of attentiveness and this mutual warranty and want for progress all the time.
Yeah.
I think, I guess, to kind of flip my answer, to flip what I said a few minutes ago, I was a good bodybuilder.
I
just wasn't a genetically good one.
I made him say it.
I
made him say it.
That's the first time I've ever said that sentence.
I've also just realised how fucking good of a speaker Ross is, and I'm probably not going to get a word in edgeways today, but I might just sit back and fucking just reel questions, or just throw questions, and they just... Yeah. Watch the Etihad over there.
It turns out ADHD is a bit of a cheat code at times, I think.
Yeah, that's it. So I think I really don't want to do the chronological, like, where did you grow up? And then we will touch on that, but I think, especially for me at the moment, I'm really living in the now. So I think that's where we should start. That sounds cheesy, but
I think we're both in a very situation that's brought us both back to now.
Now. So like, where are we now? So obviously, Phil, so there's going to be a couple of people, only a handful of people that might not know who you are. So just fill them in on kind of where we are now with yourself as coach. You've kind of touched on that you've hung it up as an athlete for now. Just give us a little rundown of what's going on at the moment in terms of professionalism.
For sure. Let's do it. Professional life. I've lived in the UK now for coming on 3 years. I moved to Manchester a couple of years ago, and it was all centered around when I got my initial job offer from Cal to work with the Muscle Mentors at the time, obviously, which is now Procoach.
Yeah.
And things have taken a pretty steady elevation from that point onwards. And I don't mean quick, I mean steady. There was periods of time where it was like super quick, particularly when Yemi won his pro card after the Arnolds. They're not last year, the year before, or last year, excuse me. So
the years are flying, bro.
Yeah, so crazy, brother, crazy. Yeah. I think that's kind of where the shift in terms of, I guess, people recognizing me as a good coach kind of came. Yeah, and I guess from there's been a level of kind of upward trajectory. And, over the course of the time that I moved here, up until that point, it was pretty steady. And things were moving well. Like before I came to the UK, again, some people who know me personally will be aware, like I didn't really have anything, like there was a long time I spent in the game without as many fruits of my labour coming through. And I was very, very lucky that, Cal presented me with an opportunity, and it changed my entire life, to be quite honest with you, my entire life. I spoke about this on YouTube videos before, and this is why I have such a deep appreciation for Procoach and why I have such a deep appreciation for Cal. Because a lot of what I have now and the opportunities that have been presented to me and will present themselves to me later, like that's all a byproduct of that offer, and it's all a byproduct of that chance that I was given. Now I worked for that chance in one way. Like I think that I used to tell people that it was like luck or whatever, but I don't think it was. I look back on it in hindsight, and there was a lot of effort that went in over a long period of time where it was just based off, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And no matter what the return was on the other side, I had to keep doing it. I was very lucky that my family were very, very supportive that entire time. And it was hard, bro. It was never easy. And now I'm in a situation where I guess things have kind of come full circle. I had a pretty significant, well, more than one significant life change happened in a very quick period of time. You know that.
Yeah.
And that has, being totally honest, like this isn't just a bodybuilding podcast. It's a beautiful struggle podcast.
Exactly.
So I told you already I'm going to be as honest as I need to be. That really set me back in every facet, to be honest with you. Personally, emotionally, financially. And funny enough, literally this week, I kind of feel as though I'm somewhat starting again. You know? And that's more figurative than anything. But for me, I have a sense of urgency almost similar to that when I was still living at home in Dublin, you know, so you can take that as a good thing, as a byproduct of a bad thing and a hard thing, but where I'm at now, I'm kind of feeling as though I'm in this period of time where it's like a now or never level up situation.
Is there a bit of pressure on you? Do you feel a bit of pressure that you put on yourself at the moment from that?
I think I felt a lot of pressure, and I think I do put a lot of pressure on myself, but then my capacity to handle pressure is very much relative to what's going on around me. You know, usually I thrive under pressure. That's a byproduct of just, you know, again, growing up in situations where you never really know what's going to be thrown in front of you. Yeah. And I guess that's something that you learn through, but I think over the last couple of months, that pressure built up to a point that I personally couldn't handle it, and I don't say that regrettably. You know, I don't say as in like I should have been able to handle it, because quite frankly, you know, essentially what I was faced with, again, I'm going to be honest as well. So like my father's dying, and I found out earlier this year that my dad has a terminal form of cancer, and I'm Irish, so we're very, very connected to our families just by virtue of that, and then family is family. So that really rocked me. It rocked me quite heavily, because my dad is not an older man, like he's not an old man. He didn't ask for his illness, and nobody asks for their illness, but in the sense that my dad is a healthy man, you know, he's a hard-working man. So he was presented with this as a byproduct of his labours, you know, like the exposure to his work eventually would be his reckoning, you know, so that was difficult to manage. And then my relationship, which is very publicly known for most people, you know, as it should be, that's how it always was, ended. And it ended relatively roughly. Again, I'm going to spare too many details for just keeping the respect on the opposing side. Yeah. But that was rather difficult, just down to the fact that the process of that was drawn out, and it was difficult. And people might notice that, you know, everyone knows I love my dog. You'll see that I don't have my dog here with me anymore. Hoping that can be shifted back over the course of the next couple of months. But there's just been a lot of change in my life that made it difficult for me to sustain the kind of non-negotiables that I needed to be on a day-to-day basis. And it cost me, man. You know, it cost me, like I said, financially, emotionally, personally, socially, in a certain aspect of things, I guess, as well. And that in of itself pushed me to this level of imposter syndrome that I've always had, but at a very, very different level, because I was like, if you were the coach that other people are, that you want other people to think that you are, or if you were the professional that you want other people to think that you are, because I definitely have a level of self-deprecation where I struggle to put myself on any kind of a pedestal for anything. Yeah. And that was difficult, because it was like, here's the evidence of all the doubt you've ever had. You know, at least in my head it was. I was presented with like, look, this is why you're not the person who you think that you are. And at the start, that was definitely not easy to manage. I'm getting better at it now, just thanks to having just sick people around me, great friends, you included. Anyone who doesn't know, me and Jay are very, very close friends. We're not just people who work on a professional level together. He's one of my genuinely good friends, and I've always appreciated having him around for not only the marketing aspect of things and the documentation of the process, but just as a genuine brother, like a genuine
Same goes,
brother.
You know
that. I know that as well as you do, and it's been incredible to see how valuable your friendships are through all this.
Yeah,
and,
I bet.
You know, even like Procoach, the team, and particularly Callum. You know, in a business proposition, if this was a purely business situation, I'd probably be gone. You know.
Yeah.
You know, like in the sense that the things that would be required for things to continue to be sustained successfully were very difficult for me to do. And Cal put his relationship with me as a friend far above anything else, because that's his baby. You know, I love Procoach and I would call it my baby, but it's his baby. Yeah. You know, I adopted Procoach. He birthed it. You know, and I'll never, ever, ever be able to find the words to thank him for that enough. you know, because it gave me the leeway I needed. The entire team were constantly looking after me. The back end team, you know, from our consultancy team, from the PAs, everyone. Like, and then my extended group of friends here who all happen to live in this building.
Yeah. This is Ireland, by the way. This building is Ireland.
This is like Casa del Dublin, I call it. And, you know, I really, really had an incredible group of friends who, like, you know, banded together to make sure that I was okay.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that kind of footfall, or if I didn't have that kind of foundation to fall back on, I know for a fact that this would have been a very different situation. You know, what the situation would have been, I don't know, because it wasn't presented to me. But I know it would have been a hell of a lot worse than it is now.
And the good thing is you'll never need to know,
exactly.
because you have got that, you know, the support network around you. You know, the support network thing is chucked around these days, isn't it? But you have got a good support network. You know, I've seen it myself just from afar. You know, being up here on other shoots or whatever, I can see like you lot like tight, like so.
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously, I think there's no way I can't do this without mentioning Oscar.
Oscar, of course.
He is the you're just obviously just finished.
He's just
Oscar
Yoda.
A couple of hours ago.
Yoda, isn't he?
Oh yeah, Oscar is the Ghanaian Yoda. And Oscar is somebody who took his time and took his attention to me the moment I got here, and he made sure that I was good in every capacity. And he just took Cal's words of me, trusted that. And then me and him became, I don't even call it, Oscar's not my friend, he is my brother.
Yeah.
You know, and I love Oscar, and Oscar loves me. And, you know, there's no blood bond that will change that in any capacity. I could be related to Oscar and it wouldn't change.
Yeah.
You know, he is genuinely one of the best people on the planet, and he has been an incredible, incredible, incredible person to me. And I'll never ever be able to find the words to truly tell people how much I appreciate Oscar either. You know, there's a handful of people I can speak about like that, and he's definitely one of them.
Yeah. Deep, man.
I don't forget.
It's deep. Yeah, you know, I've obviously been around you since you got to Manny first, actually, because I remember you coming to FLF to view the gym. Maybe one day you were just walking.
Yeah.
I think you came in this train, but it was like your first visit there, and I was there with Oscar filming JP content, and I seen the way Oscar kind of just from that day. So shout outs to Oscar, man. He's always got the right thing to say.
Always.
You know, I've had one or two issues like over the years where my head's falling off, and he's always been there. Like this thing that I've just gone through. He didn't like. He's one of those that will reach out when he knows it's right to reach out. Like at the time, he could see what was going on. And he was like, "I'll just leave and deal with this."
Yeah.
And if he needs me, I'm here. But then I'll touch base with him when he's ready. And then we were on the first shoot after all that, and once again, Oscar delivers like just the right thing to say at the right time to make you just think about things. And he's a good one.
He's a good egg.
And obviously Cal, we can't go without mentioning Cal.
We both know how important Cal is.
Yes,
Cal is like, funny enough, right? People who obviously might see me talk about Cal and see my relationship with Cal, that I'm always with him, you know. And the reason for that is that, first of all, I was a fanboy of CR Physique far before I was friends with Cal.
I didn't even know CR Physique was.
I did.
Fuck that guy.
I was a fan. I was a fan, you know. And you know, when you kind of are inspired by somebody, and then that person turns out to be all the things that you thought they were going to be, you know, which is obviously just like somebody who trusted in my ability.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no wonder why I feel the way about Cal that I do. You know, Cal is also my brother. You know, I don't look at that any differently either. You know, and Cal is absolutely 100% family to me.
Just I haven't prepared anything for this podcast because I find they just flow better when we just kind of shoot the shit and then see where it goes. But I'm obviously thinking as you're talking, this admiration you've got for Cal.
Yeah.
Now obviously you've got your dad. You know.
Yeah.
Did you have someone like a friend when you were growing up in Ireland, where you had that person another role model? Did you have that kind of figure when you were growing up, or would you say?
I don't want to say no, because then it sounds as though my family weren't the role models I wanted them to be.
Like outside of a friend.
Not really, man. So I was always different. I was always a little bit different. So things like football never really appealed to me. Like I'm from working class family.
Yeah.
You know, village area in Dublin where there's not much going on. At least when I was a kid, there wasn't much going on. And like generally the kind of the protocol or the kind of the life story of most of these individuals is quite similar, you know. Like obviously everyone has their own struggles again, and like the dexterity of somebody's life can't be painted as the same. That's just disrespectful. But for the most part, everyone had a relatively similar upbringing. Like where I lived, there's only 75 houses, You know, like
75 houses.
75 houses in the estate run from, and everyone knows everyone. It's an open door policy. You know, like for them, obviously nowadays it's a little
keys
bit
in
different.
the bowl.
Yeah,
Chuck the keys
not
in
even
the
that.
bowl.
No, I don't remember the last time my front door was locked.
Yeah.
I'm not even messing. I'm honestly not even messing. Nowadays, I reckon since I'm gone and there's a baby in the house, it's probably locked a little bit more often. But when I was growing up, I used to come down the stairs and there'd be my mates in the sitting room, my brother's mates in the sitting room, sitting there watching the football with my dad, and I didn't think anything of it. You know, in terms of like a role model and like who would have been guiding me as a child, I wouldn't have said I wouldn't have had one. I was so loved as a kid though, man. Like my ma's like a saint. You know, I always say my ma's a virgin and nobody could tell me otherwise. you know, that kind of way. My ma's an incredible woman, and then my dad is an incredible man, and he's a very hard working man and always has been. And my mom's a ridiculously hard working woman. So I guess in terms of like the inspiration to understand the value of work, that came from my family. That absolutely came from my family. And this whole idea of work is all we have. And that's really, really connected with me in a way that's obviously on my neck. But for the most part, like, I was definitely a different kind of kid growing up. Like, I was interested in the more peculiar things, you know, like I was the one kid in the estate who had the emo stage, you know, I was the one kid in the estate who got into skateboarding and BMXing and, you know, things that were kind of
just left field.
Yeah, a little bit more acute, you know, that kind of way, or a little bit different and a little bit more shifted in terms of the kind of general norms. Yeah. And then I was just different emotionally, man. Like, you know, growing up, I would have had a lot of issues with my temper and my emotional regulation. Like, I've got, again, no problem with talking about this. And I would have had some pretty significant mental difficulties from a pretty young age. And that was never an easy thing for my family, you know, for people around me, and obviously for myself. I just always knew I was a little bit different compared to other people, you know. So I think for me, that kind of ideal and that kind of differential thought process probably guided a lot of my early years, you know, that kind of way, in terms of like where I ended up, who I ended up being around. Who I ended up hanging around with. I wouldn't have had a great time in school in terms of sociability. I would have had a few core friends. They were all from the estate, and honestly most of them were girls, because my estate was just happened to be full of people who were my age, but they were all female. And then my other two best friends from the estate, they moved from a pretty young age, and we're still all tight as ever. You know, there's no difference. It doesn't matter how far away we are or how long it's been, it's all the same. Everyone has that group of friends, and everyone has that friend who will be able to come into your mind as you hear me say that. It doesn't matter. And I guess that kind of aspect of things was probably a pretty predominant factor of my early years, and it would have led me to, like, you know, early counselling sessions from a very, very young age, because it would have particularly manifested in like anger management issues.
Where do you think that stems from? You know, because obviously you see, like, you know, obviously on TV and stuff, but you see people that have had like issues with anger and things, but normally it's come from a issue in the house or at home. But from what you've told me and what you've told me over the years as well, like you said, you know, loving family, and that
I had a crazy loving family, man. Don't get me wrong, every family has problems, you know, that kind of way, and every family has their issues, but like, I had an incredibly loving household, man. Like, you know, my ma is still to this day as obsessed with me as she was when I was a child, you know, that kind of way. Like, it's the same motherly love. My dad is the exact same in the very kind of, you know, assertive Irish father kind of way. But even then, my dad's the talk of the town. Like, my dad's, like, people love my dad because he's funny, he's vibrant, you know, he gets on with everyone knows him. And that's always been the way it's been, you know, there's always people in the house. I really couldn't tell you where it comes from, to be honest with you, man. I guess I kind of know a little bit more now. So, like, what would have started off as like issues with regulating my emotions in the form of anger would have been a lot of it centered around kind of empathetic ideas, like trying to fix things and trying to manage things for people, and then just not really understanding when people would be anything other than either like friendly or courteous to me. Because when you're that young, you don't understand people, and then when other people are that young and they're presenting you with these things that make you feel the way you do, they don't really, the kids don't know what they're doing either, man. Like, no matter what age you are, if you're the bully in school at 6-7 years of age, that doesn't make you who you are, you know, that kind of way. Like, and I would have had some issues with that growing up, you know. I would have got bullied for where I was from, for the fact that I was, you know, wearing an older uniform than the rest of the kids, or you know, wearing glasses, being a little bit more heavy set. I was fat as a kid for a while, you know, and that would have just led me to, snapped, and then like snapped at home, and I couldn't sort something out, or, you know, again, it will get bad, man. Like, I'm talking like wall punching myself, like tearing the gaff apart, like, and it just kind of rolled from there. And then as I got older, that kind of manifested into, like, to be perfectly honest with you, man, a pretty deep depression for a pretty long time.
Cameras reset. It's a one-man band, so just deal with it.
Like I was saying, it's like, it definitely wasn't coming from my house, you know. Like, like I've tried and I've been in and out of therapies for 20 odd years. Like obviously there was periods of time where I wasn't, and longer periods the next. But like I've always been in and out of, I guess professional help in some capacity. And then as I got older, that kind of manifested into a pretty deep depression and like a real self-loathing of myself. And it's hard to hear for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people throw the depression card out all the time.
Yeah, now they do.
All the time, bro. It's social media, and like I don't actually look at that anyway badly if people saying X, Y, and Z.
No.
Like I was diagnosed from a very young age, and I was medicated from a relatively young age as well, and would have carried its way through school. And I would have had a lot of trouble in, I guess, not necessarily solving the problem, because you don't necessarily solve those problems, you learn to manage them. And it would have took a long time for me to learn to manage those thoughts, and that was never an easy thing. And as I got older, school was difficult. I was fabulous at some subjects and then terrible at others. I would have periods of time where I was great in school, periods of time where I was a nuisance.
What subjects were you good at in school?
I was good at English. I still love to write to this day.
But you're Irish, though.
Sorry,
you're
Irish.
Irish.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, Irish people speaking Irish is pretty rare.
English. Well, people speaking English. We've been Oscar talking about this. Sometimes you could just go, whoosh, and you just don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, I think for me as well. So again, a funny fact on that one to break the sadness.
Yeah. That was my angle there. Yeah. We'll come back. We'll go up and down.
We'll go up and down. So we'll come back to this one. So when I first moved here, obviously I was like the token Irish person on the team.
Yeah.
So I've been talking the way I talk for my whole life. Like that's all I know. Because it's my voice. But I remember I would have been on the first couple of Muscle Mentors calls and like a handful of podcasts and obviously consultations calls with prospective clients. And I can't remember if it was Cal or Luke who texted me. And I got this message. I was like, bro, I'm really not trying to offend you in any way, but you're really going to need to sort out the voice. Like how fast I talk, the accent.
Yeah.
So over the last couple of years, I've kind of like had to learn how to keep my voice at a level that, say, people are able to understand. Like if I'm speaking to other Irish people, I can guarantee you 95% of people won't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it probably sounds like a car crash.
It's just quick and it's fast and it's full of slang. Irish people speaking English is full of slang. It's full of words that mean other things. So there's a lot of that going on, and I think I've learned to somewhat harness my professional voice now to a level where people can understand it. Without losing.
What you say?
You fucking prick. But yeah, that was definitely something. But again, going back to the original point.
Go for it.
School was definitely hard, but it was during that time that when I was very, very young, as a means of kind of managing that emotional regulation for me, I started martial arts. And it was traditional martial arts. Other people would know it as karate, but I think sometimes when you say that word, people are just thinking like sports complex, dudes in tracksuits, some old lad thinking he's more solid than he was. This is like legit traditional martial arts where I was whipped into shape, and I guess if I could look at maybe a male role model then, it would have been Kevin, who was my instructor, or we use the word sensei. And I think it was probably the first time where I was just made to do things. I was always made to look after the house, and I was always
other than clean your room, like
that kind of thing. Like, well, me cleaning my room was definitely a myth, but like I was always brought up with manners and respect, and the old adage of it's nice to be nice. That was always something that was like kind of grilled into me. Maybe that's part of the reason why I couldn't understand as a child what people wouldn't be the same. Maybe that's a part of it. But martial arts really, really helped me, and I ended up doing martial arts for about 13 years and winning national championships, European championships. Like multiple years in a row. And that became kind of the focal point for me to outwardly express myself, or outwardly express and manage my emotions. So I guess that was definitely a help, and it definitely helped me manage some of the other issues I was facing with my mental, because, like other times that was very, very hard. And like, I'm not going to go into the details of the depths that emotional, those emotional struggles got me to, but it was to the kind of darkest side you can kind of get to without going into too much detail.
Yeah.
And, I think that eventually it would be those ideals and those kind of struggles that would, I guess eventually kind of help me get to the point where I kind of understand who I am a lot more. When I was the latter end of school, I was still kind of struggling, probably dosed up on meds at that point in time as well, that were definitely not the easiest thing to manage, and I don't fully believe helped me all the way. I'm not anti-drug or big pharma this, big pharma that. A lot of people need those things, and I reckon at the point in time that I was utilising those things, I reckon I did need them. Even if I did feel worse when I was on them, it probably, not worse, but it definitely didn't make me necessarily feel better. you know, but it definitely probably took me away from a point that was not a place you could stay as a child too long. You know, that's kind of, again, about as far as I'll go on that one without trying to create too much of a pity party around myself. When I was in the latter ends of my school years, I think probably the biggest turning point for me was when a girl that I was seeing at the time. Now, when you're 17, 18, like, you have friends who are girls and girlfriends, but let's be realistic. They're not legitimate relationships. They're not mature enough for a legitimate relationship. So I always struggled to use the word girlfriend at the time. But a girl who I was seeing, she actually killed herself. And it was about a week or two before my final exams in school. I think you guys called them A-levels. We called them the Leaving Cert. And that was a really difficult period of time. And what it ended up doing, though, was just like really, really hammering home that you never know what anyone is dealing with.
Yeah.
And I think that it just kind of stepped me away from too many negative ideals, you know, in the sense that I was like, you know, you're faced with that. Like, here's the thing that you've been worried about before. Here's the thing that you've contemplated. Look how hard it is on everyone who deals with it. Yeah. You know, that kind of way. And I'm still quite close to the girls' families and just like friends with them all and that kind of thing. Now, like I said, I would still very much struggle to say that was a partner or a girlfriend or a relationship, but it was just at the time that's what it was going as.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that was a big turning point for me. And then what would eventually happen, literally only as a 28-year-old man, is I would come to realise that probably the reason that a lot of the treatments that I was using didn't work is that I probably wasn't actually depressed. I probably wasn't actually dealing with that as a definitive issue. I actually have ADHD, and what's turned out to be pretty severe ADHD. And I'm saying that now because one of the things that I promised myself and I found out is I would advocate for it.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking to just start putting up content and start hammering home that it's this crazy thing, but ADHD is an incredibly complex condition. It's incredibly complex, and it's not just something that you can say you have, or you can say that, oh, I have traits of this, or look at me being it. You can't do that. That's literally the same as me turning around going, look at me, I'm autistic. Because they're actually both two neurodivergent conditions.
Right.
And I was able to finally realise that my brain just works differently than other people's. The way to describe it for me with a lot of people, and the way to describe it for me with kind of giving people an insight into how I've always thought, and what I soon realised, or what I came to realise, quite shockingly, to be honest with you, is not how everyone else thinks. Is if you imagine going to a concert, and you go to a concert, the guy who's performing has a microphone. That's kind of how the normal individual's thought process works in a normal day. Yeah. For me, imagine a concert, but everyone is given a microphone. That's kind of how my mental works all the time. All the thoughts are equally as loud as they normally are. And that happens 24/7. You know, I've had so many random thoughts since this has started that have absolutely no relevance to what we're doing.
Really?
Oh, so many, man. So many. Like, I speak to people all the time, and, you know, a second ago I was thinking about something on the floor there for far longer than I needed to. You know, just things like that. But going back to it, what essentially that kind of has done for me is it's allowed me to understand myself a lot more. So in a very simple sense, I'm not going to bore anyone, because, again, there's probably people who heard me say that. I'm like, oh, he's just saying this. It's not this. It's not that. Like I said, it's an incredibly complex condition, and it's a neurodivergent condition that essentially dysregulates the amount of dopamine that I produce. So the amount of space that the brain occupies for a certain level of dopamine, I don't have as much. So it takes an awful lot for me to feel reward. And it takes an awful lot for me to be able to find a place where I can feel rewarded. So this is why it's so easy for someone with ADHD to be distracted, because they're constantly trying to find a dopamine hit. Their brain is constantly trying to regulate that neural pathway. Yeah, yeah. And that's essentially the basis for the way that it is. And
I've never heard it broken down.
Yeah, but that's because people just think it's someone who's hyper. That's not what it is. And that's fine. Yeah. You know, like that's not ignorance. It's not fucking disrespectful to not understand it. Like, people who think that not understanding certain things are disrespectful is just fucking stupid. Like, if you don't learn about something, how do you expect to understand it? Yeah. You know, I only really dived into the learning process of all that when I got the inkling that might be the problem only like a year and a half ago. You know, because I started to realize, I was like, why didn't any of those things work for me? You know, like, why did it? And the reality is that ADHD isn't really an issue with hyperactivity. It's an issue with regulating your attention. The reality is that it should be called attention regulation hyperactivity disorder. Like, it's because it's not a deficit in attention, it's a regulation in attention. When I'm focused on something, you literally cannot take me away from it. I can't hear anything. I'm in, and you cannot take me away from it. There's an ability to hyper focus on things.
It's like the opposite to a deficit, isn't it?
It's the total opposite to a deficit. It's all about regulation. Yeah. It's where you're regulating your attention. If you imagine that attention is a limited resource, and that limited resource is kind of measured in, 100 units, or for example. Yeah. If you imagine that most individuals can put maybe 80 to 90% of their attention to the same topic. There's always going to be distractions for every individual. If you imagine somebody with ADHD, like me, for example, definitely for me, I can put 10% of my attention into 10 different things at the same time. But that doesn't really get anything done.
No.
You know? But then when something is either paired with pressure, a deadline, or I'm incredibly interested in it, I can put 150% of my attention and I can get work done in speeds that most people could never get done. A fun fact is that most of the seminars that I've ever done as a professional, I've done the night before.
I've witnessed this.
Yeah, I've done the night before. And that's not because I'm being lazy, and it's not because I don't care. It's because the ability for me to control and regulate attention to anything that's too far away from me is very, very hard. There's some really good doctors and some really, really good researchers in this area, which obviously I've become more and more inclined to be interested in. And one person put it really, really well. It's that if it's not in front of your face, you can't see it. You know, so like anything that's like away from our immediate attention is almost impossible to think about.
Yeah.
And that's kind of something that's honestly brought me a lot of peace in the last couple of months, is understanding that, okay, this thing that puts a lot of sense and ties a lot of the loose ends of the questions that I had around my upbringing, the questions that I had around my ability to understand myself, and, you know, just other elements of like my own limitations. I get them now. Because I've often really, really struggled to get things done that are so simple on paper. So simple.
Yeah, well, when we were in the Procoach meeting, when we were on about like setting Rosker tasks to do.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. So you can't get like one of the jokes that's done is that, like, if somebody asks me to do something that's too far away, I just won't do it, and it is not because I'm unwilling to do it. It's I just can't think about it. It's so strange, you know, because I obviously up until relatively, like, I only got my diagnosis at 28. I'm 28 now, you know, so I've probably had this since I was a child. You know, and I probably should have tested for it sooner, or at least thought about it sooner, because my little sister also has it. You know, my little sister also has ADHD, yeah. And it is genetic, it is hereditary. You know, it can be passed down. It can also be something that you develop as a child, even if there's no hereditary kind of basis for it either, because essentially it is something that's happening during the process of your brain development. You know, so if you're genetically inclined to not develop that part of the brain or that functionality of the brain, or if you're exposed to certain aspects as a child that maybe limit your ability to allow that to regulate itself, like, you know, trauma or whatever it is, you know, it may develop that way. So this is what I'm saying. It's so complex, and, you know, I don't want to be a privy individual or kind of one of those like Karens or anything like that, but I do think that if anyone is here who is inclined to say they have it when they don't, please don't do that, you know, because or if you're somebody who believes they might have it and you genuinely believe you might have it, go and get tested for it. Go and do it.
It doesn't matter that it's taken you till now to work that out. Yeah. And hindsight is always fucking, what they say, 2020 or whatever, but like with everything, especially recent events, you know, if you'd known about this previously, you know, would it have changed anything for you? But ultimately,
I reckon, like, if I was known to have this as a child or even as a younger adult, I probably would have been medicated by now. And I think that basis of medication would have probably helped. See, can you even say it helped if it happened in the past? Like, can you even look at the past? Yeah,
it's hard to look at it like that, isn't it?
You can't, like, what ifs aren't really a real thing.
And also, with the amount of focus that you may have put on your coaching at one point, which put eyes on you, as in muscle mentors, cardio, etc., would you have had that hyper focus on your coaching to get yourself in front of those boys, to put you now in this position where you're 30% Mancunian?
Yeah, exactly. That stings my ears to hear. So I'm 100% Irish, you know, and I've adopted this place as a set down.
I can hear a twang in your accent every time I come up.
You know, I think that, like, had this been something that I understood as a child, and let's say they medicated me as a child, maybe my attentivity in school would have been more widespread, and I would have ended up doing what I'd originally planned doing. What a lot of people don't know about me is I was actually coaching when I was like 16. Like, I started coaching, I started being involved in gyms from a super young age. And literally from that very moment, this idea of helping individuals this idea of being part of that community was something I was super interested in. It was around that time actually that I started working with a fella called Larry Doyle, who was like the OG Irish coach, OG Irish bodybuilder, and turned out to be one of my closest friends. And he kind of took me on from a relatively young age, just like keeping me on my shit, kind of, that kind of thing. Yeah. Eventually, he would be the one who prepped me a couple of years later. So I guess you could say he was probably my first initial role model in fitness. But I can guess and speculate that if my attention was probably more evenly divided around all of my responsibilities, I wouldn't have been as hyper interested in fitness, in coaching, in martial arts, in that kind of, that was like one circle for me. All of that was kind of encompassed into one area, the coaching, the martial arts, the gym aspect of all of that tying itself together. Like, would I have been as interested in that? Maybe not. And maybe that is the byproduct of the superpower that is hyper focus with people with neurodivergent conditions like ADHD.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, man, it's a nice way of looking at it. But I do think that understanding myself now and being aware of this thing that is a part of me, it's not a limiting factor for me. It's not. And, other people have aspects that they may consider themselves, limited by, be it your social construct, be it your life experiences, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't really consider this a limitation. I don't now anyway. I definitely don't now, because I'm like, okay, now I can work with my brain and not against it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've been I'm trying to fall into like conventional norms of attentiveness and like conventional norms of time management for so long that just didn't work.
Yeah, they just go over your head. Like,
I can't tell you how many productivity tip videos I've watched over the last couple of years because I can't understand why somebody in my position isn't able to do the very basics of productivity at times.
Yeah.
It's a lot better now, again, because when I have the moments where I feel as though I'm being distracted, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not going to get angry at myself for this. I'm going to just get back into work. And it's been a real change. And I think that a lot of things in my life have changed very, very quickly over the last, I guess 4 or 5 months. My whole life has been kind of spun on its head, and I guess this is all, I think for me, I tried to think about it as almost like a symbolism. It's like, right, all these things have changed and now your life is going in, my life is going in the same direction. It just doesn't have the same vehicle I thought it would when I was going in that direction. I'm on my own now.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that to happen. That was something I didn't really expect. And my direction hasn't really changed, but I think my ceiling now has elevated itself. Like, I feel as though I can do more and I can be more than I have in a very long time.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that right now, if you kind of look at it from a numbers crunch perspective, I'm probably at the lowest point I've been since I moved here. And again, I have no problem saying that. Like, people love to go on and on about how successful and great they are. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to say I'm far more successful, but I've been given far more opportunities that other people would kill for.
Yeah.
And it's not that I haven't taken advantage of those opportunities. It really isn't. I've grabbed what I have, and I've been grateful for what I have and grabbed it with both hands since the moment I knew that this was something that could change my life. And it has. Mm-hmm. And I'm not taking away from what's happened up until now as if it's been pointless. Like, I'm still on a far higher springboard than I could ever have dreamed of being on.
Of course, man.
I'm just very aware of where I am comparatively to the impact that, I'm very aware of where I am and the impact that what's happened to me recently has had on it.
Yeah, and, we're approaching the end of the year. I've been with you on many trips this year. You've done a lot of travelling, man. You've seen a lot of things this year, which, as much as you say you're at the lowest point that you've been in a certain stance, you've had a stormer of a year as well at the same time. And I know that next year is probably going to be even better, especially like... trying to word this right now, especially now that you've just got yourself to focus on and it's literally just Ross and Procoach. Let's go.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that was, funny enough, when this all went down, that was the scariest thing about it, but now it seems to be the most positive thing that can come of it. And I think that when this all first went down, like when my relationship ended, like that was something that was, it was so like, I don't want to say the word unexpected because I've said that so many times, but it was so like, bet you never thought you'd find yourself here. Because that was it. That was really where I was. I was like, I bet you never thought you'd find yourself here. But like, the way I kind of do my best to look at it, right, is we all tend to be quite grateful for the things that we're given. That kind of way. Like, you're grateful for where you grew up. You're grateful for your family. When something good happens to you, you're grateful for it. But I think if you're grateful for your life, you have to be grateful for everything in your life.
Definitely.
Even when shit goes down, because you've been presented an opportunity to get better, or you've been presented an opportunity to improve yourself. And I now look at the challenge of like what's been put in front of me as somewhat of something I am grateful for.
Yeah.
I try to be stoic in ways. I think is my ideology that I guess I would try to profess as many times as I can. But I think that for me, being met with that level of challenge is also being met with a certain level of opportunity to get better at dealing with those challenges.
And there's going to be a point in time when hopefully you can look back at this moment and say, I'm glad that happened to me then because it propelled me to here.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to relate it to myself and what I've just gone through.
Yeah, for sure.
I know I'm going to look back at that or that moment and what I've experienced, and it's like, oh, I bet I'd never make that decision or whatever in the future, and it's going to take you to another place, and you just got to, what you got to do is just capitalize on that moment and fucking take yourself there so you can look back and not just let it fucking drag you down.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Because it can fucking, it's a slippery slope, man, if you just leave it fucking keep dragging you down.
Yeah, 100%.
And before you know it, you could be back in Ireland.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Twiddling your fucking thumbs.
Yeah, well, that's what it is, man. Like, if I was to box off where I am now and forget about where I used to be, right, and then look at the situation through that frame or through that lens, at least constantly. And don't get me wrong, I've done that. In this whole process, I've looked at my situation. I'd be like, oh my God, everything has fallen to shit. This is terrible. Yeah. But then I think back, I'm like, right, 3 years ago, man, I was sleeping on the bed and the floor. That kind of way. Like, it's like, I was struggling to make any money. I was off the back of being quite ill. I went away to Asia and got quite ill off the back of that. That kind of stayed with me for like 8 or 9 months where I couldn't train and lost every client I had, really. And, COVID came around and, things were all over the place. And it's just like the level of gap and the distance between those 2 points for at least someone like me or someone from where I'm from to be able to even conceptualize is so far. And I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm in that, and like I'm very aware of where I want to be. I'm very aware of where I am now. I'm very aware that I'm nowhere near the level of coach that I want to be and the people who I want to work with and the level that I want to take this to and the way that I want to do it. I truly believe I coach people differently. I don't know whether it comes from like some this kind of level of empathy that I can't really get away from, but I'd like to think that I really do try my best to look at athletes as the humans that they are. Mm-hmm. And I think that if that might mean that I'm less inclined to kind of be robotic in the way that I approach things, but the experience and the impact that it has on these people is the way it is, then so be it. So it's like, I guess I'm so aware of what I can do rather than what's happened to me.
Yeah.
And I think that just having that frame of mind as best as I possibly can, and it's not going to be all the time, is probably the thing that's allowing me to continue to look at this with a smile on my face. Because I am. Like, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. Like, people meet me and I'm quite laid back.
Well, you're Irish. You're like a
exactly.
leprechaun, innit?
Yeah, exactly. We're self-deprecating by nature. I think that's kind of the way that we operate. If you can't slag somebody else, slag yourself. It works pretty well. So I think that a lot of people might be somewhat surprised to hear the things that they heard here, because I guess from the outside looking in, I don't want to materialize into existence the things that have happened to me in the past or technically in the present, I don't want that to be outwardly expressed. I try my best not to. I address it. I don't ignore it, but I definitely do my best to, just try and be a positive impact on the people who I meet. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm going to continue to do and continue to professionally do, and hopefully that'll continue to let things run.
Right, so as this is like a little bit bodybuilding, let's talk about Ross the bodybuilder. I gotta break it up, bro. We filmed fucking how many episodes of Walk the Walk?
Man, shit, that was a good experience, man.
Yeah,
so that was cool.
At one point, conversations were going off and on camera of like this ambition to be like up there in the bodybuilding, like on stage as the athlete. Yeah. So, how did that go? May as well get it. You said you would talk about anything, right?
Yeah, I talk about anything. So that prep, right, originally was to be significantly longer than it ended up being, right?
Yeah.
And I was away in the States at the time, actually getting Rohan. I went to Chicago. People don't know that I went to Illinois to get Rohan.
Yeah.
And it was during that time that my original plan was to actually go and do a show in the States, just a regional show, just to do it because I was going to be there teaching a seminar anyway. And that was the plan. All was good. And then kind of not disregarded, but kind of had forgotten about some of the red tape that's involved in doing that. So Ian, Mr. Two Bros, the man who I appreciate and has always been a good person to me, to Procoach, and to just about everyone else who's involved in bodybuilding, he was in touch with Cal, I believe, and was like, yeah, he's going to have to do a regional still so we can kind of get this sorted and kind of go over all that. Now, I think on paper you didn't need to, but I'm not 100% sure. But either way, that was the...
UK regional first before going abroad.
That was what I was faced with, because the US is technically a closed circuit. So I think what was supposed to be a 22-week prep or something like that was dropped to like 11 weeks. So I had like... Oh, man, I had easily... I don't know, maybe 60, 70 pounds to lose, probably. And probably not that much in a longer prep. It probably wouldn't have been 60 pounds in a longer prep. Like, it probably would have presented itself a lot better. I wouldn't have to get as heavy with it. And I had to do a lot of shit that a lot of people I don't think will be able to do. You know, really like 2 hours of cardio from the very beginning. You know, like 20,000 steps a day, weighted vests. You know, pretty high lipolytics. And
pretty
the addition,
high.
pretty high.
Pretty high.
Pretty high lipolytics, and the addition of 1 or 2 lipolytics that are the Voldemort of the bodybuilding, the Voldemort
Cough,
of the body.
cough.
Yeah, cough, run DMC. Cough. And I battered myself, man, for a pretty long time. I ended up losing like 75 pounds in like 11 weeks. Like an outrageous amount of weight, but also a pretty outrageous amount of muscle, you know. And look, that's just one of the reasons why you don't really see photos of me on stage. You know, you don't really see photos from that prep. There's definitely documented pictures of when I was like lean but still pretty big, and before things really, really got the heat turned up on them.
Yeah.
But I don't regret that one bit. I looked like a small boy by the end of it, and anyone who see me on the day, it was the MK Classic Cuba show, or even in the lead up to that show a couple of weeks beforehand, would know that I was tiny, bro. You know, I went from like 116 to like 82 kilos, maybe even a little bit. I think I was even lesser than that at one point, and then worked back up to it. And I remember the loading process. I was like eating. I was like, getting fuller, and I was like, yeah, I absolutely was not getting anymore. My body was fucked, man.
Yeah.
But I have absolutely zero regrets, like zero. I don't wish I looked better. I don't wish I looked bigger. I love that prep was the way that it was.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, if I jump back into bodybuilding, if I don't, I know for a fact, 1, I'll never have to do that again. And 2, if I do, I'm going to be able to, you know, because I sustained some really, really difficult shit for a really long time. And that for me is the value in that prep, you know, not necessarily, I probably wanted it to be the way that I looked. You know, I think the original was to win the novice, the novice British, I think was the original plan. And then in terms of like my overall perception of myself as a bodybuilder, I think that what I learned and what I have learned from like elevating myself as a coach, which is my first love, and anyone who's ever met me from the moment I began bodybuilding and the moment I began coaching will have heard me say the exact same thing, is that it's coach first, athlete second.
Yeah.
You know, now there was periods of time where I said that I can divide those things evenly. I'm at a situation in my career where I could, and I probably could. The problem is that I love bodybuilding, and it doesn't necessarily matter what facet of bodybuilding that I'm sitting in, my love for it doesn't change. And when I realised that I am always and wholeheartedly a coach is when Yemi won his pro card. I have never ever felt anything like that in my entire life. And to this day, the overjoy, the reward, the watching his family celebrate, watching his friends celebrate. I was beside Cal and Tom Hames, Tom Hames is another person who I fucking love and inspires the shit out of me just because being a good guy, being a good coach. He's a little bit younger as well, so I always kind of like want to emulate that, you know, and just being at the biggest show that the UK has. You know, it's the biggest amateur show, and arguably in Europe, like it's the Arnold's. You know, and to be the person who took the card in that show, and then to be their coach, and then to be as close to that person as I am.
Yeah.
It was just special, man. It was a really, really, really special feeling. Anyone who's seen me would know I was crying like a baby. I'm a pretty emotional guy.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, I'm a pretty emotional guy. It's very easy not easy to make me cry, but I have a willingness to cry if I feel.
Yeah, I'm one of them as well. Don't worry about it,
If
bro.
I feel enough emotion, I'm probably going to cry. I'm getting jerked up now a little bit, but like it happened, and you know, I went over, and then Jim Mannion was there, and like all the coaches who I respect came up, and they respected me.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there, and the year beforehand, right, I remember it was when I first started with the Muscle Mentors. I don't even think I'd officially started yet. I'm not sure. And I remember walking up to, Callum was standing outside, Tom was standing outside, I believe Martin was standing outside, and Rob was standing outside. And I remember walking up, saying hello to Cal, and like, not that anyone ignored me, but I remember this feeling of being like, I'm not part of that. That's not me. You know, I'm not there.
You're not part of the clique.
And I went in and I sat at anyone who knows the layout for the Arnolds last year will know it's like a real long set of floor level seats, and then like what other people would call the nosebleeds, you know, like, and I sat in the very corner of the nosebleed on my own because I didn't really know anyone. Nobody really knew me. And I remember sitting there and thinking something is going to come of me.
Was that the first year of the Arnolds?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember sitting there. Funny enough, Yemi actually competed in that show, funny enough. But I remember sitting there watching the pro show, and I think, was Diasha competing at that?
Yeah, it was Diasha and Samson.
Yeah, Diasha and Samson were there. And I remember that well. I have a photo of it from that point, from that position. And the next year, I'm sitting in the front row with Callum, with Tom, and watching my athlete come out to compete in the pro show. And I remember sitting there being like, honestly, nothing beats this.
No,
nothing.
It's
Absolutely
good that you can. It's good that you had that initial moment up there, looking down, and then the following year looking back.
Yeah, man, it was cool. It was really cool, and I think other moments like that. There've been a couple of other moments that I had as a coach that have really allowed me to kind of cement my ideals in that space. And the way that I now look at bodybuilding is that if it is going to take too much away from my ability to coach the way I want to do it, then I can't allow myself to do it. It does not mean I love bodybuilding any less. It does not mean I'm less respected in the sport of bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. It's just that my place in bodybuilding is probably not, at least long term, and then not like finally or not fixed on stage. It's not. It's on the laptop. It's backstage. It's in the check-ins. It's in a dingy hotel room in some random town in the middle of Europe, trying to make that final call, because like there's something so. Like, there's something exhilarating about knowing that whatever comes out of your mouth and whatever decision you make has to positively impact the look. And it has to get that person to where they need to be. It has to be. And don't get me wrong, I've not always made the right call. I've had many calls that I regret. But there's something about that feeling of making a call and then it works. You know, and you're like, yes, you know, and like, you can get my hair standing up, and the hair standing on the back of my neck even now thinking about it, and I fucking love coaching. Yeah. And I think that's just part of me. Like, when I was in school, I thought I wanted to be an English teacher, and I thought I wanted to be a history teacher. And I realised after I didn't fuck up my exams. Life dealt me a poor draw. That situation I spoke about with the previous girl, that happened the week before my exams. So by the time I got there, it wasn't really something I was ready to do. I also got the shit kicked out of me a couple of days before my exams, and I actually busted all the tendons in my wrist, which I still have to this day. So by the time I got there, like, it was never going to work. Yeah. So I ended up kind of doing PT in the meantime. But I'd say about 2 weeks into that course, I was like, nope, this is it. This is what I want to do. Because I didn't want to be a teacher. I wanted to help people.
And how old were you there?
I'd already been in and out of gyms. I was 18 or 19.
18, 19.
So I knew that I wanted to do something like this very, very young.
It's cool that you knew that at that age.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Because obviously, you know, just from my own experience, when I was 18, 19, I didn't figure my shit out till into my early 30s. Yeah. Really. Still figuring out. But seeing, like, you know, my stepson... you know, what I'm going to do. My daughter now is like, you know, thinking of what she wants to do and stuff. It's clueless, but then, you know, in that kind of, that's what I want to do, when you were 18, and now you are
28,
37, and you know, obviously you're still doing it.
Yeah, man.
And to the highest level.
Yeah, I was doing it younger than that. I kind of was in and out of gyms, shadowing PTs when I was like 16 or 17, like in and out, just like watching, doing what they do, because I knew I was interested in it. And then I was like instructing the martial arts. I was teaching kids martial arts. I was coaching kids in martial arts. So I always got such a buzz from that. And You know, I think it fit me as a person. You know, that kind of way. It really, really did, because I guess you're in control of the outcome.
Yep.
And I think that's a big thing for me. I think it's a big thing for anyone. You know, a level of control in a certain outcome is what we all strive for, you know, no matter what that outcome is. And I think that's probably what brought me to coaching as my be all and end all. And I will not ever not do it.
Yeah.
I just, like, obviously I'll get to a point hopefully where I can do a little bit less and, you know, raise a family and have kids and, you know, have a wife and that kind of thing, and loads of dogs. I fucking love dogs. I also want to be a dog breeder.
Okay.
I'd love to breed dogs.
I could see you as a dog breeder.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I look like a pit bull. That's probably why. The amount of people that tell me I look like...
There's only one pit bull.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Big Rob, I look like a bulldog. We'll call him a bulldog. The amount of people that tell me I look like Rohan, and Rohan looks like me, is pretty frightening, to be honest with you. Yeah, and he's a dog. It's that old thing, you know, like the dog always starts to look like their owner.
Yeah.
So there's that ideal as well. But I love dogs. I'm a big dog guy, particularly bulldogs, and that's something I'd love to get into as well. But again, that's going to be a product of, like, you know, owning my own home and that kind of thing, and allowing that to be something on the side that I've always wanted to do. But like with coaching, you know, I have no qualms about saying it. I think I've said it on podcasts and videos before. Like, I want to be one of the best coaches on the planet, and I actually believe it's very, 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 very few things that I believe wholeheartedly I can do. But I feel like there's enough evidence in my psyche. I feel like there's enough evidence in the people I'm around. Like, the way I look at it is, I couldn't be around better people. Like, there's literally no collective of individuals that I could be as close to that I am, and as, like, as influenced by in the direct sense than I could ever ask for. Like, who else could I be around?
Yeah.
You know, who else could I be close to? Who else could I look to know personally that won't allow me to elevate myself to that standard? I know everyone. You know, I'm so lucky that so many people have let me into their lives in this game, and so many people have allowed me to ask questions and learn, because I'm a nuisance. If I'm interested in something, if somebody knows more than me about something, I'm going to badger you and badger you and badger you. That's probably one of the reasons why Cal just gave me the job, so I'd stop asking him questions all the time.
Yeah.
You know, because I want it all, you know. Yeah. And, like, I fully believe as well that every coach is met with the athlete who will allow them to do that, and I believe that for me that's Yemi.
Yeah,
you know, and this isn't me putting Yemi on a pedestal at all, because I don't put him on a pedestal. I grill him.
Fuck Yemi.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck Yemi, you know, and I grill him all the time, you know, all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel as though the funny story about that as well that people might not actually know. So Yemi applied, and he actually applied with Callum, right? Now, anyone who knows Yemi and has seen Yemi would know this is one of the most genetically gifted people you'll ever see in your life. Let's be real about it, you know, the tiny waist, the crazy proportions. I don't know why, to this day, Cal told Yemi to work with me. He could have done it himself. And, like, that's mega for me, man. You know, like, that was huge, you know, and it really, really was huge, because obviously as Yemi's social standing continued to grow while he was prepping, so did mine. And, like, it's not that, like, I've a lot to thank Yemi for, and anyone who knows me and Yemi now would know we're literally like that. Like, we're brothers. Like, Yemi's my family. Like, he's my boy.
30% Nigerian.
Yeah, exactly. I'm 30% Nigerian, bro. That's what it is, from the waist down. So, so like, you know, things like that are, like, just these, what seem like very insignificant things.
Yeah.
Are so massive, you know. So, like, the opportunity to work with the muscle mentors, you know, and, like, I don't know what it is that Cal ever seen in me. Like, I don't know what it is. I'm aware of what I was doing up until that point, but I do sometimes sit there when things are tough and when things are difficult, and I'm like you are the person. Like, you are the person who was presented with this opportunity. Nobody sits closer nobody sits closer to that individual than you, in a kind of rhetorical sense. So it's kind of like all these things, and I think about all those moments and all those, like, individual facets that are going to set me up for what I can do. And obviously it's now my job. Like, here is this opportunity, you better capitalize on it, you know. But I think about all those things, and, you know, how lucky I am to have that. And, you know, man, I'm excited. Like, I would have had, for the last couple of months, with everything going on between my father and the relationship, and, you know, the dog being gone is a really, really hard part of my, like, anyone who knows me knows I fucking love my dog, man.
Yeah.
Fucking love my dog. All that definitely pushed me away from what I was supposed to be doing, you know. And there was periods of time where, like, even I was coaching some friends of mine, like my friend Joe, who's like, he's my boy, and I remember that he texted me when all this was going on, being like, I think I'm gonna go somewhere else because I don't feel as though the attentiveness is there. And I don't blame or disband Joe's decision at all. But I remember sitting there with that going, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, why is this affecting me so much? And at that point in time, it didn't get fixed. It really didn't. I was in my own head about it. I was dealing with my father. I was dealing with all the other aspects of things that were creeping up on me. And then it got worse when, the whole relationship thing creeped up. But like, honestly, as of right now, I somewhat feel as though I've been planted back at not square one. Square one for me is Dublin mattress on the floor, a couple of 150 quid a week, maybe. That's square one. But I've been presented with a new starting point, kind of like kind of like a lifeline, like this is like, you can't go much lower than this and you're still pretty high, so take it.
Yeah.
And I have a sense of urgency that's quite similar to the way that I felt when I was the 18, 19-year-old coach who was like, I need to get out of here. Yeah. This has to work.
It's like that pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, and I do feel like that. It's that kind of, pressure is a privilege. I think Seabum said that. I'm sure somebody else said it before him, but, he's the man who's allowed it to travel. And I kind of feel as though I'm in that situation now where I know what I need to do, and I have not felt like that for a very long time.
I think it's good. Even when you mentioned earlier in the podcast about the imposter syndrome, as much as that's thrown around, I deal with it, bro.
Of course you would.
With Magic Eye, like 8 years deep. There's so many creators out there now, and I still get it. Like with people that
everyone knows that you are the GOAT. Everyone knows. Now, in a literal sense, how do you quantify that? I don't know. But man,
still,
yeah,
I look at guys that have been doing it fucking 10% of the time sometimes, and that imposter syndrome is still there.
Yeah,
but it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah,
it keeps you just pushing and wanting that next level, whatever that may be. So again, just going back to what we said about you, it's just about capitalizing on the moment. Like when Cal gifted you Yemi, capitalize on that, because that I think that was Cal's way of going.
It was.
Let's see what you can fucking do here, boy.
I know that. I know that. Like Cal's always been. I would say Cal's the older brother I didn't ask for, but I'm glad that I have. He's been exceptionally good to everyone on the team. Yeah. Maybe I'm just more emotionally connected to what he's done to me because I'm an emotional person anyway. And I think that I'm very, very lucky in that respect, man. And I've always said to myself that I am lucky to be in the position that I'm in. It doesn't take away the work that I've done to get there. But I am very, very lucky, and I feel very, very blessed that I am part of Procoach.
Yeah.
Like Procoach is, without a doubt, in the UK, probably in Europe, the most respected coaching team. Let's be real. Okay, It is. And I'm not saying that takes away the level of respect for anyone else. I'm not sitting here trying to put Procoach on a pedestal.
No, it's not about that.
It's not a fuck everyone else thing.
It's not about that.
It's a I am Ross Byrne, and I am so lucky to be part of this thing. And funny enough, I remember, and I still kind of do to this day. I remember I used to say to myself, I want to be the next Cal Racetrick, and I still do, but it's kind of changed to I want to be the first Ross Byrne. Yeah. And that's been that's a way that I haven't really been able to look at it before. I want to use everything that Cal has taught me and continues to teach me to become the first Ross Byrne. And I'm hoping to just carry that through, and just keep doing my thing and, just kind of allow things to improve and just, try and get across a positive message. Because my biggest problem is like social media, like not showing up on social media. Again, the reason for that quite recently is all of the other shit that I've already listed that I'm not going to go say again. But that took me definitely away from the...
It will.
Yeah, exactly. It took my eyes off the prize. Definitely I was off the ball a little bit there, but... I'm very lucky that I'm in the situation that I'm in. I'm very lucky that I know what I need to do with the situation that I'm in. And I'm very, very lucky that I have the people around me that I do. Yeah. And when I pair those three things together and I really, really think about them, I have everything I need to be the coach that I want to be. And I have all the tools at my disposal to allow myself to manage any hurdles that come up in the process of doing that. And again, that is an ideology and that's a thought process that I haven't really been able to articulate to myself the same way that I can now comparatively to the last couple of months. Yeah. And I'm glad that I can do that now.
Yeah, I think once you're settled, obviously you've just been travelling, once you're settled and the turn of the year, game on.
That's it, mate. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, love it, man.
Yeah, big time.
That I would say that brings us to the end of the podcast, unless you've got anything else you want to touch on.
No, not particularly. Nobody asked me any questions in the Q&A. Well, actually, one or two people did, but I think there were more so the lads taking the piss. So
yeah, I had a couple of piss take ones.
Yeah, a couple of lads that piss take.
Well, before we wrap this up, silly question, but did you have anyone you want to thank?
No, funny enough, actually.
No, fuck Carl.
All of this I did myself.
Yeah.
You know,
I like to
it's
thank
it's like Snoop Dogg. You know, he's like, lastly, I'd like to thank me.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Nah, but obviously the kind of people I want to thank, all my friends here. I'm not going to list everyone off, but all of my friends in Manchester, you guys are the greatest. You are the best people I could possibly have around me, and everything that you've done for me up until this point, especially recently, I will never, ever, 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 ever forget. Callum, it goes without saying, you have been somebody who's allowed me to do the thing that I do and do what I'm good at and do what I'm best at the level that most other coaches will only get to dream of. And I'll never, ever be able to thank you enough for that either. And the whole team, I mean, Zach, Alex, Ryan, Emil, Hayder, Louis. I could keep this name. There's a shitload of us now. All of you guys are incredible. Zoe, my PA, not my PA, excuse me, Procoach's PA. You are the bomb. She's been amazing, just helping me. She's been the part of my brain that I've been missing.
Zoe the glue.
Big Zoe. Zoe is a legend. I also coach Zoe. And Zoe's an incredibly adherent athlete as well. She's amazing. I want to thank her as well. Hannah, Cal's wife. I want to thank Hannah. She's amazing. All of my other friends, Hannah Wares particularly, I want to thank as well. Hannah Wares is one of my best friends as well, and everyone else I can possibly think of. Like, you know, there's so many I can think of. Oscar, obviously. Jay, big time. You, Jay.
Oh, thanks, mate.
You're an incredible person. You've always been good to me, you know, and, you know, even, I think when you met me, I was still an emotional basket case, and even then you were always happy to sit down with me on and off camera. You know, there's so many people I can think of listing. You know, there is so many people, but it's the people, my family, my ma, my dad. You know, they're not going to watch. My mom might watch this. My mom always watches these things, no matter what. I'm brilliant, son. You know, my mom, my family, my brothers, everyone. You know, the
people make the person, bro.
Yeah, I think
the people make the person.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I agree. So, and
if you're surrounded by, you're going to be one of them. But if you're not, and you got a good click.
Yeah, I do. And I have an incredible circle of people that expands into my professional life and my family life and my social life. And those people they're genuinely the reason I'm able to just get back on my feet again. You know, because I think when you fall down, it's irrational to believe that, especially when you fall down from a height, so to speak, again, to kind of speak in tongues here. You know, it's impossible to believe that you can get out of that on your own. You've just had a fall. You've fallen from a height. You're not going to stand up and jump back out. You need to be helped up. And I think at times I will struggle to accept the fact that I need help. And I was not necessarily open to that help a couple of months ago, but it was given to me. It was like, I'm helping you. And that would continue to be the trend with every person who I'm close to. And the byproduct of that was me feeling significantly better, significantly more settled, you know, significantly more ready to tackle the rest of the year and the new year, and significantly more positive, honestly, positive about my entire situation. You know, like, there's still lots of shit that's got to be ironed out. Obviously, my father is still sick. You know, it's like these things are still difficult, but because of all the help that I was given with the other facets of my life that were hard, I now have the ability to focus on my family and be there for my family, and allow for any difficulty that I have to be predominantly focused on my dad, you know, and I wouldn't have had that if it wasn't for the people around me. So, like, the ability for me to do that is something is worth being thankful for, you know.
Definitely, man.
Big time.
Love it. Right. Well, thank you for coming on, brother.
It was an absolute pleasure, brother.
Thank you for talking as much as you did. Here's the timer for the camera.
Does anyone else get mad anxiety when they hear that noise? Because that's my alarm in the morning. And you know, they sometimes reels have those. It goes off. It's like, get up, motherfucker! It's time to go.
The thing is, right?
Every time I hear it, I get anxious.
I've got 3 other people living in my house that got the same alarm, but they can sleep through it for 45 minutes, not even fucking pressing snooze. No. Whereas I hear it once and boom, up downstairs, fucking cracking on.
Funny one, actually. I was convinced I was sleeping through my alarms. Right? I'm like, I sleep through my alarm. I'm a heavy sleeper. I wasn't doing that at all, because I started realising whenever I got up, my alarms were off.
Oh, you were setting it.
Alarms going off, boom.
Oh, really? Just straight off?
I was turning it off totally and then going back to sleep, totally forgetting about it. Yeah. Kept up, slept through my alarm. I was literally just turning my alarm off every time. Fuck that. Yeah, slept through it. I just wouldn't even. Nah, man, thanks for having me.
No, thank you, bro. Thank you to everyone for listening via iTunes, Spotify. It's not on iTunes yet. Spotify, YouTube. As always, subscribe, like, comment. The end of the year is approaching. I think this is episode 21. I haven't been calling them episodes, but I think it's 21 episodes now. So it'd be nice to get 2 more to finish 2023 with 23 episodes. Just some weird numbers. So
yeah, you could definitely do that.
I've got a couple lined up.
Yeah, you could definitely do that.
It's just they've got shit going on. I'll say we've got Nath Styles, who's in the DMs.
Fucking love Nathan.
And we've got The Shed.
Hey.
So James was... They're doing the gym. They're busy. So
yeah.
as soon as that's done...
I've seen that. That's going to be a good gym, bro.
It is.
It's going to be a good gym. It's in Cheltenham, right?
In Cheltenham, which is ideal for you at the minute after that. Not to talk about that too much, but I know they've gone into like all the Atlantis kit. They've had extra handles built, extra fucking to alter the strength curves and all sorts. Like a prime.
They've gotten like modifications to it.
They've gone to town on it. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably had what's his name, Cassim probably come in because I know JP's tight with Cassim. JP's tight with everybody, really.
Yeah. So that'll be cool. So
yes, very, very cool. Big up to them. Best of luck.
Definitely. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I shall catch you in the next episode. Peace out.
Peace and love.